Hi,
Hi.
welcome back. A couple days ago, I made a video criticizing Starrel's stupid decisions as I usually do, and I got a really good comment by one Katana's War fan saying, "I've seen many people say that balance doesn't matter in PvE games, you should discuss why that's not true next." And yes, Katana's War fan is very right here. I've been making videos about power creep and balance and all that stuff for a few months now, and without fail, almost every video will have a comment saying that this is just a PvE gacha game and balance doesn't matter. What matters is that you can have fun with your characters. However, there are many things that those commenters don't realize which I want to address today. In this video, I want to talk about why balance matters in PvE games, but specifically PvE gacha games, and more specifically Honkai Star Rail. And of course, I'm going to talk about the implications of having no balance in your game. This is a matter of player satisfaction, marketing your game sustainably, and of course, how much fun you can actually have in the game. Before we start though, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this in the future, as well as share your opinions in the comments below. And when you're right down there, you should join the Express Raid Discord server for a fun and lovely community to hang out with, as well as free cat pics from me personally. And it's free! What a deal! Now let's get on to it. So let's start with defining our terms. Balance, as will be discussed in this video, is the game design aspect where newly introduced characters or items that players can obtain are not game-breaking in a way that makes the game too easy, breaks the rules of the game to get around certain mechanics unfairly, or is significantly more effective than any other item or character previously, to the point where these older items or characters start to become obsolete. So let's start with part 1.
Pretty, isn't it? Perfectly balanced. This whole thing should be.
There are examples of balance in PvE video games actually being unimportant, and forgetting all about it would actually instead be more fun than otherwise, like Dying Light's legend level buffs being absolutely broken, but also requiring an insane amount of farming and also not affecting the flow of the game negatively. Of course though, this video is about gacha games and Star Rail, so let's not talk about Dying Light too much. So by contrast to Dying Light, in a game like Star Rail, a character balance is so much more important than you could ever imagine. As I've said earlier, it's one of the most common counters I get to any power creep video. It's a PvE gacha game, so character balance isn't important, just have fun with the characters. If somebody comments that under one of my videos, then they're actively contradicting themselves, and I'll explain why. When you look at YouTube guide stats versus the amount of money the game generates and its daily active players, you'll notice a huge size difference. Basically, people that are actively engaging in online content for the game are in the top percentile of the player base, which is a very small part that actually plays endgame content seriously. And even if the rest of the player base does interact with any content, it's usually a very large guide maker, CC, like Brax or Guoba, and they probably don't interact with much else. That large part of the player base that doesn't do the endgame content is obviously very casual, because endgame content is usually reserved for more active players that want a challenge. So if you tell that part of the player base that balance isn't important, just have fun with your characters, you wouldn't be contradicting yourself. However, again, I'm not part of that majority of players that don't play the endgame content, and if you're watching my content, by definition, you aren't either, and you have favorite characters you want to use to clear the endgame content as well. So someone can't really go around saying, balance isn't important, just do whatever you want with your favorite characters, because that obviously, objectively, isn't true here. Someone can have a favorite character for multiple reasons obviously, but the only way to really have fun with your character is by playing them. And someone who likes Blade can't exactly use him very effectively in the endgame content these days. This is the same for most 1.x units and even units that came out in 2.x, like Black Swan and Sparkle, who are just left to starve because one of them quickly got phased out because her meta was killed by unbalanced characters like Acheron and Firefly, and the other also got insanely power crept by other unbalanced characters like Sunday. Clearing endgame content with your favorite characters is very important to having fun in a PvE gacha game, and when someone is complaining about balance, you shouldn't invalidate their gameplay experience and how they want to play the game by simply saying, just use the new characters, so what if they're broken? You can clear the content with them easily. As I said, it's true in talking to one of the majority very casual players, but unless you personally know a majority very casual player, you probably won't find them online because most of the time, those people aren't on the social media platforms of the game. So when saying this statement to most people you talk to about Star Rail on social media, it would be a very selfish take, unless both parties are gacha meta slave players. In that case, you've got a whole slurry of other problems and I feel very sorry for you.
Get some help.
So basically, when you introduce so many unbalanced characters so quickly like Star Rail has been doing, you get a very steep power creep curve that ends up leaving so many older units in the dust very quickly, which makes many who own these units feel cheated. After you just got Black Swan for your Kafka and just finished building them with their perfect relic sets, Oopsies, Acheron comes in and absolutely breaks everything, and now those who finally built up Facial will taste the wrath of the AoE meta and Herdine Castaways. Saying that you can just use the new units is very unfair, because not everybody wants to have to use Herdine Castaways to clear the endgame content. Right now you either have to use very expensive old character teams, so expensive to the point that the teams consist of 4 5-star units, possibly with Eidolons and Light Cones, just to end up clearing still 3 cycles slower than a completely free-to-play Herda team. Just because Herda is powerful and fun to play for you, doesn't mean it's fine to have an unbalanced unit, because you're not the only player that plays this game. As I said, it's a very selfish take. Now, let's move on to part 2. This video obviously came about because of a comment I got under a video about Castaways being an unbalanced unit for multiple reasons, those being that she applies 20% all-type resistance shred on all enemies for her party to take advantage of, and of course, her global passive. This whole situation is probably the one where I got the biggest number of these balances unimportant comments, and especially from those who think Castaways is their girlfriend and Hoyoverse is somehow a good game development company that never messes up. Other comments I got were also those saying that imbalanced characters are more profitable. The point I want to make here is that even unbalanced characters can bring insane amounts of revenue. They don't have to be needlessly broken to be profitable. Since Castaways is such a fan-favorite character, regardless of what part of the player base a certain players falls into, if they like Castaways, they're going to pull for Castaways because that's usually how gacha players operate. I've seen many people argue against this point. Well then, if balanced characters don't reduce sales, why did people not spend as much on, for example, Rappa, Hyunli, and Argenti as they have spent on Acheron, when the former three were seen as very balanced units and sometimes even underpowered by some players, and Acheron was super overpowered when she came out. However, those arguments fail to realize that Rappa, Hyunli, and Argenti are not only nowhere near the popularity level of someone like Acheron, but Argenti and Rappa also released when the game was very slow, and their story quests were questionable at best. Rappa's story quest was by far the worst in the game, so that definitely affected her sales. And Argenti's story is that he's just a guy that shows up whenever it's plot convenient. Meanwhile, Acheron released as an anniversary character that is another version of Raiden Mei, one of the most popular characters in Honkai Star Rail's sister game Honkai Impact, and also had one of the best story and lore in the game, even if the storytelling was still subpar as usual. If Acheron released with the exact same power level as Jingliu, maybe a little bit stronger, while yes, some F2P players would have perhaps not pulled for her because they already have what they think is at the very least a very good DPS, and at the very most a contender for the strongest DPS unit in the game, people who are going to spend on Acheron would have spent on Acheron either way. Like we said earlier, most of the player base are very casual, and I use the term very casual here to describe someone who barely, if at all, spends time on social media communities about the game, and just plays it in their free time and again, barely, if at all, touches the endgame content. They're most likely just going to pull on the character that they like the looks of, some of them are going to spend money and some are not. They are of course a massive part of the player base and a lot of revenue will come from them. Even when looking at more competitive or hardcore players, then most of the time, we also have characters we are very dedicated to that we pull because they look good. Someone who is going to spend on Castaways will definitely 99,999 times out of 100,000 have spent on Castaways with or without her revive mechanic or 20% resistance shred. And while someone who wasn't going to spend on Castaways is still most likely not going to spend on her, then they either 1. Feel forced to spend on her and end up doing so, or 2. Will because of her being broken and imbalanced fall behind of the meta, especially if they also haven't pulled for units like Herda and Aglaia. They will try to use their favorite units and they will not have fun because most likely they are not as competitive anymore, so introducing a character that is unbalanced will only be negative, barely generating any extra revenue, while introducing balanced characters isn't going to generate any less revenue. In fact, introducing balanced units would result in more revenue because continuously introducing unbalanced and broken units makes the part of the player base that is like myself more and more dissatisfied with the game, thus forcing us to quit. Now, we've already discussed in many previous videos how Star Rail makes imbalanced kits. The most prominent video is the one where I discussed how they continuously break game rules with their designs, Acheron with her 20% resistance ignore, Firefly with her implant, Castaways with her revive and 20% resistance shred, and many other examples of rule-breaking kits that turn out definitely unbalanced. Hopefully I don't need to explain to you why this causes power creep and HP inflation, and obviously makes older units less and less viable. This is also not just a gacha game tactic that all gacha games do. Not all gacha games have power creep. In fact, for most people who play gacha games, the only popular ones you find that actually have an insane amount of power creep are like Honkai Star Rail and Honkai Impact. There are many other games like Summoner's War, Arkanites, Battle Cats, and Persona 5X that don't have such an insane amount of power creep, barely if any actually. There are definitely examples of games like that out there, but the fact that I can't name them because I don't know them should probably say something. As I've said, this has killed the game for me and for many other players, and hopefully in this video, I have also convinced you that balance is pretty f***ing important in a PvE gacha game like Honkai Star Realm. So let me know your thoughts below, and thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this in the future, and join the Express and Discord server for a fun and lovely community to hang out with, and for pictures of my cat. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time.